in our conversations with our clients, the countries in which we operate, but also I think in at the level of our board. And I speak here for the World Bank, but I think all of the multilateral development banks who work so closely together are in the same journey. The conversation now is that the rights and the expectations and the hopes of people in every country for sustainable development are being actually actively undermined by climate change today. So we calculated that failure to get to a 2 degree temperature rise will actually take away 4 to 5 percentage points of GDP growth for sub-Saharan Africa. So there is a negative impact. Now, if we go back to Christiana's idea of a business plan, then that business plan is for sustainable development. That business plan is really oriented around greener growth, more inclusive growth that is greener, so that everybody gets that opportunity to have the kind of livelihood and be able to develop sustainably, as the Minister said. But in the business plan, in the risks and opportunities section, the big risk is that climate change is making it more and more difficult to do and more expensive to do. We believe that there is a way to do this, respecting the fact that every country's starting point is different. So the low emissions development plans of some fast-growing middle-income countries are going to be different from the green growth plans of small island developing states. And even within small island developing states, the options and the opportunities, the investment needs and the partners in those investment needs are going to be different. But the destination is the same. And I think that this is where we now feel that we, together with other members of the UN family, need to bring together both the ability to think through and plan for greener growth for all in every country, but also then mobilize the money for that. So no business plan operates without finance. And then thirdly, the knowledge and the leadership necessary for it. A couple of points. The focus is very much on low emissions development and mitigation, but actually there is an investable plan for adaptation as well. We've spent a lot of time here this week talking about adaptation-based mitigation, so the importance of the agriculture and forestry debate and really bringing that together into a landscape approach. This is fundamental for the livelihoods of the poor so that they have a pathway forward in a greener growth for all. So how can you invest in agriculture in such a way and in agroforestry in such a way that the poor are able to raise their yields, raise their incomes? You get the resiliency that you need in order to be able to have some kind of economic asset base that people will invest in. And then, of course, the co-benefit of that is mitigation. And so it isn't just on the mitigation side that these greener growth for all plans, this idea of developing, taking away the fact that climate change is undermining growth and development should be focused. But it's also not just about the green agenda. I mean, $500 billion is invested in green energy worldwide on an annual basis. But $7 trillion are invested in new infrastructure and $5 trillion in energy every year. I think these numbers are important to bear in mind because there's a lot of focus about where is all the money going to come from. You know, there's a lot of money in the world. It's about moving it into investable plans for greener growth and setting the incentives around that differently. But this $7 trillion in infrastructure and $5 trillion in energy, no matter how difficult that is to mobilize for the long run with the Eurozone crisis and a continuing economic contraction, I think what's important about that is that if it's not invested with an eye to a sustainable development where climate change is understood as being undermining of that, then we are locking in a carbonized future which is going to make emerging markets, developing countries, uncompetitive in the long run. A couple of words just on finance. We focus a lot on the Green Climate Fund, and we all hope that there will be an agreement here on Durban's gift to the world will be progress in that. But for every country, you have to think of a pie chart of finance. The financing for greener growth and for the green economy going forward is going to come from the mobilization of domestic resources. Most developing countries are building their own domestic capital markets. It's going to come from foreign direct investment and the activities of the private sector. It will come through multilateral development banks, it will come from official development assistance, and it will come from climate finance. all of these things together. And the public components of that pie chart must be allowed to leverage easily the private investment so that it's all moving in the same direction. A country like India, that is so proud of the targets that it's set for itself domestically, is mobilizing its own domestic capital markets to lead the way and showing how and where green investment is necessary and creating the investment conditions for longer-term finance to flow into the country, changing banking regulations in some cases, but showing how it really can happen. Third point is about knowledge. The how-to is something that needs to be shared around the world. And that how-to is within the private sector, within the financial community, the insurance community, within institutional investors, within multilateral development banks, UN agencies, etc. And I think that you're starting to see the building of open knowledge platforms. We're working with UNEP on a green growth knowledge platform. We're working on climate change portals that provide the data and evidence that give confidence to national regulators that if they build it, investment will come, but also give confidence to investors and to those with finance that they will be able to achieve the co-benefits and the impacts that they want to with their investment resources. The reason, if I sound optimistic, is because we're here in Africa. 15 years ago, the story of Africa was, where is the growth? The story of Africa today is it is growing, and it is growing at quite a click. The point is now to take that growth, make it sustainable, make it work for all Africans, including farmers and foresters and small business owners, women and men. And I think that there is a way to imagine that growth in a greener way than the way in which the industrialized world imagined it over the last 150 years.